Welcome to the Bitovi. What are we calling it? Welcome to the Podovi Bitcast. Well, yeah. For this Bitcast, what we want to do is talk about what's new with Bitovi, because we've grown in the last 16 months from 2 people to 11. So a lot more is happening a lot faster. So we're going to use this. We're going to try this out to give monthly updates to let people know what's happening and what's coming. So joining me is Ralph. Hey, Ralph. And David.
Hi, everybody.
Ralph is the team lead on CanJS, and David is the team lead on JQuery++. So they'll be talking about what's new in their projects. So about Bitovi, kind of since JSConf, we rebranded from Jupyter to Bitovi. A lot of people ask why. Jupyter was a structurally poor name, but we really like Bitovi. It means bit and as in bite, and egg as in ovum, is Latin ovum for egg. So the idea is we hatch software. So our goal is to continue to be or continue to deliver exceptional software that is new, cutting edge, all of that. Part of this. And a big part of that, our new goal, is to make our technology as user-friendly as possible. So this is why we've been breaking up JavaScript MVC into, first was CanJS, and then we did JQuery++. We were going to continue to work on Steel, but due to the popularity of JQuery++, we're shifting focus to CanUI. And then we're going to continue to Steel and then to FuncUnit. So, that being said, Ralph, you want to tell us about CanJS?
Okay, CanJS. What is it? CanJS, if you're familiar with JavaScript MVC, you'll be very familiar with CanJS. It's basically just the MVC parts of JavaScript MVC kind of pulled out, slimmed down, polished to be its own project, and to kind of compete with the other MVC frameworks out there, such as Backbone and Ember. We've made a lot of changes in CanJS to those MVC parts, many along the lines of live binding in views, shaving file sizes off, memory safe. We've also added a bunch of library support, so we can now do MooTools, Dojo, YUI, Zepto. So it's kind of like a nice rewrite of the JMVC parts of JavaScript, or the MVC parts of JavaScript MVC, and slimmed down as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we really set out to build the best MVC library possible, right? I mean, we try to cover all bases: smaller, faster, safer, easier,
yeah,
and librarier.
Yeah,
that's my favorite. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And we released it at JSConf. We did a nice Bitovi. Everybody flew out to Arizona for 10 days before JSConf, and just everybody heads down in CanJS for about a week before JSConf, and we really polished up the documentation, got annotated source up, anything you could ask for. We got it done, and we released it at JSConf, and it's I think it's been a pretty successful launch since.
So yeah, it has been. But while we were working in Arizona, did any Easter eggs get added to anything? We'll just say there's an Easter egg on the Bitovi site.
Yeah, the rebranding also took place in Arizona. So there's. It wouldn't take a developer too long to figure out what the Easter egg on Bitovi.com is, but I would recommend it if you can find it.
Anyways.
So, yeah, Justin just finished up a nice 42-minute intro. Well, not intro, but I mean overview of CanJS. I would encourage you to check that out. It should be up on canjs.us soon, but it just goes.
I've linked to it on the homepage.
Oh, nice. Goes through in detail each part of CanJS and how to build a to-do app. I think it's really well produced. Really, I mean, I've found nooks and crannies of the framework that I didn't know about in there. So I would definitely recommend it if you're thinking about using CanJS.
So you think it's well produced?
I do think it's well produced.
Thank you. Yeah, it took a long time, but I feel like it was better than the JavaScript MVC 2.0 video. I think you've seen that, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully my voice is
everybody
mellowed out a little bit. Getting a little older.
Yeah, comes with experience.
I started smoking just so I could record it better.
Get a little more gravitas in your...
Yeah.
But yeah, we have some great new features planned. We are working on a recipes page, which dives into specific parts of the framework. So cool things you can do with model by itself, cool things you can do with control by itself, and then kind of piecing those all together into a single app. Justin, you worked a lot on some of those recipes. Can you talk about any of those?
Yeah, my favorite is the bring it up here.
Live binding.
Live
binding is cool.
I don't know why, but I just really like how CanEJS is able to you can pretty much write any function and it just will automatically become live. And this just demonstrates that Twitter and a lot of websites have, someone tweeted this a few seconds ago, a minute ago, that kind of thing. But I noticed, at least on Twitter, that those don't update themselves unless you click on like show me new tweets. They don't live update. And this shows how you could do that, I think, pretty easily.
Mm-hmm. Along those lines, I wrote for one of my clients. We have a mobile app we're working on. One of the things they needed for the mobile app was to be able to persist some of their models while offline, because you don't know when a mobile app is going to have a data connection or not. So one of the things we needed to do was save instances of models to some kind of offline persistence. So we did the SQLite in a web SQL database. And one of the examples in the CanJS recipes page is how you can create a thin model layer that saves your models to local storage and will load them for you when you're making calls, RESTful calls like find one and find all. It'll hit the local storage first, pull in any data that's there if it exists, and then it will call out to the actual API and get updates from that, and then update the live template without having to do anything, because as you just update the models and the template reacts without you having to tell it to. So that was really cool.
Yeah, that's something that I've really wanted to work on for CanJS is a really good caching plugin that like you basically just inherit from it. Your models inherit from that, from it, and you just pass it just like you would find all, find one as strings. But those will get cached, and in the background, it'll go to the server every time. Well, it'll return the data right away, but it'll go to the server, see if there's updates, and then automatically update that list and any model instances. So you always seem to get, after the first load, an instantaneous response, but because live binding is so easy with CanJS and it's used, your DOM should just change when the updates come.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's really cool.
So you can create a thin database layer and use some new features in CanJS where you create static methods that mirror or kind of intercept the RESTful calls of any models that get extended off of it. So, for example, if you're creating a database layer, you would implement a make find one function. And that way, when you extend off of that database layer and you actually define your own find one function, you can intercept it and kind of figure out what you want to do, and then call out to the extended find one, which sounds complex the way I just described it, but we'll have documentation up for that soon, and it's super simple. And if you can look at the example on the recipes page, and it's really easy to follow.
Yeah, it's cool. You just basically, to kind of summarize what you were saying, it's basically it allows someone who's like extending your model to still use like the string URLs, but you can that will get converted into a normal find one request, for example. But what you can do is you can intercept that call, do your caching lookups and that kind of thing. And return the kind of a wrapper function around their implementation of find one. If that doesn't make any more sense, I think, but it's complex. Yeah. But like if you're trying to do some interesting things with model, it makes it a lot easier. And we're really looking forward to adding some plugins to that.
Yeah. If especially if you're interested in caching offline or improving the experience of a slow connection, being able to load the models from local storage or WebSQL or what have you, really has given us a really responsive UI, even when you might be on Edge or a crappy 3G connection. It still gives you a responsive UI while allowing you to update from the database. So if that is a problem set that you care about, check it out, because CanJS makes it very easy to code around that kind of situation.
Yeah, and it could also be used for live connections, comment connections, because you could trap the request and then make sure, tell your kind of your live connection that you're now caring about this information, because it would make those kind of patterns easier, like kind of like JavaScript MVC's model store. That could be implemented much easier now. With this make find one, make find all. This make layer. That's a good name. The make layer.
Make layer.
We'll call it that. Yeah.
All right. Layer. I'm down with that.
Sure.
And then Justin, you want to talk a little bit about Can Compute?
Sure.
So I kind of developed that quickly while I was away, and came back and I'm like, oh, what is this awesome object that I can now make widgets with?
So what Can Compute, the idea behind Can Compute, which you can kind of see here, is what it really is it's the live binding mechanism. Its ability we took from EJS its ability to call a function, see what's being listened to or what's being read, and then set up basically a callback handler that gets called every time any of those properties change, recalling the function and getting the new result. That's essentially a big component of how live binding works in EJS. Can Compute is that separated. What it allows you to do are provide, one allows you to create computed values. Let me open up the forums post on this guy really quickly. A Can Compute basically just represents a value, some value that can be changed, and you can listen to events on it. It's really like an abstraction for that, for just some single value that you can change and listen to changes in its value. Where it's really powerful is when you want it to be when you want that how do I say this? It's really powerful when you want multiple, when you want computed properties. So let's say you had someone's an object that had first name and last name, but you wanted a widget to show someone's full name. You can pass that widget, if the widget accepts computed properties, you can pass that widget your compute that you build that combines first name and last name. So it's kind of a contract for a value, but those values can come from other computes, from combined observable properties. You can also write translations so that you can change a value from you can change progress from 0 from 0 to 1 to a percentage value from 0 to 100. Right? So if you're on your model, it keeps between 0 and 1, but a widget needs 0 to 100, that's okay. You pass that widget a Can Compute, So for Can UI, we'll talk about this a little bit more. It's going to be based around Can Compute. It's going to accept Can Computes, and the good thing about Can Compute though is that it works with any value. Like if you can pass it a 5, you can just convert that 5 into a Can Compute. But if someone passes it a function, it can also convert that to a Can Compute. Or if someone passes it a Can Compute, it'll also, I mean, that'll work too. So it works with pretty much anything. Yeah, exactly. Does that make sense? Does that help your understanding, at least, Ralph?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm excited. I have some widgets that I need to work on. I'm excited to hook them up with the compute, so it should be good.
Yeah, I think what it's really going to be useful for it'll provide useful for 2 things. One, for allowing us to make widgets that don't have to that can work either just with like simple data, simple like a simple slider where you just pass it the values and you can listen to change on its values. It's not hooked up to a model data, or you can live bind it to model data. I think that's one area that'll be really nice.
Mm-hmm.
The other kind of longer term is I've really always thought about orchestration. How do you take so you've got all your views, or your like what I'll call like traditional MVC views, which are CAM controls, and they have their APIs. And what you want to be able to do, and you have your models, and what you want to be able to do is start assigning kind of model properties and pairing those to your views, and then listening to changes in your views and acting upon the model and like the high-level control layer. Basically, that's orchestration. Like, how do you take a bunch of controls and widgets and hook them all up together?
Right.
Right now, it's done in CAM control as traditional being used as a traditional MVC controller. But I'd really love someday to kind of make a layer that allows you to, I guess, write that less with code and more declaratively. And I don't know what that looks like yet, but I think that Can Compute is the
beginning
note.
stages.
It's the note in the orchestration, right? It's like the basic unit of transaction that allow you to say, okay, well, this value goes to here, this value goes to there, this value is computed this way and then goes to there. You can start stringing your views together, and that's what orchestration is. And I don't know what that looks like, but it excites me.
Cool. Sounds like you are Beethoven, and you are putting together an orchestration of code.
Was Beethoven blind and had syphilis, or was that Mozart?
Maybe.
One of them.
So, not all properties of Beethoven reflect Bitovi.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. That seems really cool. The other thing that we're trying to get released for CanJS, which is kind of like pseudo released, you can get at it. There's some docs for it. Is I shouldn't say pseudo release. It's released. We just haven't pushed it very much. Is Can Fixture, which is if you're familiar with JavaScript MVC, you've probably been using Fixtures for a long time. But it's a great way to mock Ajax calls. So if you're working offline, or you don't have a fully baked API yet, but you know kind of what your response will look like, or have an idea of what it'll look like, you can code. You can write your code in such a way so that it still points to all the correct API points. It's just when your Ajax requests fire, they'll get intercepted by these fixtures, and these fixtures will return whatever data you like. And there's some cool features around, make sure that it takes 2 seconds for the API call to come back, or you can write programs to scripts to make the data that's returned dynamic. So those are that's one of the other new features that's going to be documented and kind of pushed with CanJS in the future.
Cool.
And then another feature that's coming up that the community is working on, we have a guy who's, how do I say this? kind of lost my train of thought. We'll have to edit this out.
The guy who's working on push
Push
state?
state, yeah. So we have a contributor who goes by the name of The Count of Zero, and he has agreed to work on a push state plugin for CanJS to be integrated into the router. Is that correct, Justin?
Yeah. The idea is that instead of listening to hash changes, you can listen to push state changes with CanRoute.
Yeah.
And you can create your you can basically do the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can specify like matching rules, routing rules that get matched, and then convert those into objects, or convert that into data that changes like the CanRoute's observable data that you can bind to, and then do your thing.
Yeah. And that, for me personally, I think push state was one of my favorite features that came out of the HTML5 spec. So I'm really excited for this. I think this will be great, especially for the web as a whole. Getting push state, more used by developers, I think will be good. So I'm excited for this.
Yeah, it's awesome, and I really appreciate the Count of
The Count of
Zero's
Zero.
work on this.
Yeah.
Is his name Michael? I don't know.
I think so.
If it's
yeah.
not, I'm going to cut that out. I'll go back. I think it is too. But yeah, I think he's helped on other things too. I forgot what exactly, but he's a pretty active guy on the forums too.
Getting that deferred to
IRC.
work the first time, I think he's done a lot on that.
Was that him? Yeah, I think that was him too. Yeah, he's been pretty awesome.
Yeah.
On stuff like that.
Another thing we're going to do is we're going to integrate Justin's well-produced 42-minute CanJS video into the documentation. We're going to do a little bit of a popcorn JS type of integration with that. So if you're looking at a particular part of the documentation and you would like a little video intro or explanation of what's going on, you can jump quickly to the corresponding part in Justin's video, and I think it follows pretty closely with the documentation on canjs.us, correct?
I mean, almost exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it can.
Right.
I think eventually what we'll have is that at the top of the page you can push kind of the play button, and it will change the layout of the page slightly and scroll the content of the page as the video changes.
Yeah. So that will be, I think that'll be really cool. And like I said, just watching some of the examples myself really crystallizes things. So I think it'll be really helpful for people who are trying to learn CanJS or MVC in general. Just get a feel for where things fit in an overall app. Yeah. So I'm excited for that.
That video was so hard. Like you hear kind of in the beginning where I'm like, CanJS. That was I recorded that like 25 times at least, trying to get the way I say it. Because we're doing it wrong right now. Every time you say CanJS, you're supposed to say can and kind of like make a fist, like you're really like you want to get some serious work done because you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I had I could capture the spirit well. I kind of
felt
need like a Ving Rhames voice or something like James Earl Jones. I need to hire him for just to say the word CanJS.
Yeah, what is
probably be like $20,000, but worth it.
Yeah, that'll be our next investment.
Yeah.
So that's coming. I'm excited for that. Another thing that we've been getting requests for is a framework-less version of CanJS. People don't like. Some people are purists and they don't like being boxed into jQuery or Dojo or more MooTools or what have you, or perhaps they have their own library they'd like to use that isn't one of our supported libraries, something a little more obscure. So we're working on a library-less framework, library-less CanJS, so you can just use all the good parts of CanJS without having to be tied to a library. So that's another thing that's in the pipeline.
Well, I mean, one interesting thing is if you're building like a very, a mobile app that doesn't have a lot of animations and that kind of thing, you could get away with. I mean, CanJS has its utility layer, and there's actually a lot of functionality in there, like selectors and things like that. And this designed for every browser other than IE.
Right, absolutely.
So you could probably get away. I mean, Zepto is awesome, but do you need, like, if you've got CanJS, do you need much past its utilities that something like Zepto offers?
Right.
If you're building I don't know. You might not.
I think that's a pretty valid point. I mean, even with the state of WebKit transitions and stuff like that, you could just toggle class names to get your animations done and use CanJS for the rest of the heavy lifting. So I think it's definitely a valid use case.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about getting some of the popular underscore library into the observe list?
Yeah, I mean the idea, and this was requested by Ben Allman. He mentioned he really likes the underscore methods, and he would like to see those on a can observed list. So like pluck and things like that that aren't on our list. We would have kind of an underscore plugin that you would load, and it would weave in all of underscore's methods onto our observed lists.
Or Lodash, if that's your flavor.
Or Lodash, yes. Yeah, Lodash.
Yeah.
Or Lodash.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, I like underscore. I've used it, multiple times in personal projects. But I find a little bit of bloat. I use probably 30% of the available functions on a good project. So I think getting at least the array and some of the object stuff onto observed lists will be beneficial. And the last thing we have in our pipeline currently is supporting a second templating language for CanJS, and people have a templating purists have a problem with executing JavaScript in a template or having too much logic inside of a JavaScript template. And there's really no restrictions on that with EJS. You can do anything you want in EJS, which can work to your advantage or to your disadvantage if you're depending on how you're setting things up.
I would say if you're an idiot.
Right. I didn't want to go there.
Like,
but
if you're really doing silly things in the template, it would work to your disadvantage. But I mean, I'm gonna support. I think Mustache is a great idea for the framework. But and I think it's definitely prettier looking than EJS. But I've done a lot of projects and I've never once seen EJS like someone do something really evil,
really dumb
inside EJS because they can run JavaScript there. The only times I've ever seen real evil is I saw someone embed a script tag inside EJS so that they could run JavaScript code that would like call an animation when the thing was run.
Yes.
So you can you can do the same evil in anything that allows a script tag,
right? Because
you could put JavaScript in there and people will apparently do it. But I mean, I think most people, you have to get your data ready anyways for a template in JavaScript, because you can't like go to the server asynchronously within a template and still have that template execute. So I think the people's gut reaction that they learn from the server doesn't apply as much to JavaScript. But still, all with that being said, I like Mustache. I think it'd be a great fit to get live binding with Mustache into CanJS.
Yeah, absolutely. If we could get the live binding in a second language, I think people will gravitate towards that, because there's a lot of apprehension. I know a lot of template purists out there who prefer a logicless templating language. So I think it'll be really exciting to have that as an option as well. So with that, that's all I got on CanJS. I think there's a lot to look forward to. I'm really excited for the future.
Yeah. All right, cool. Thanks. David, you want to talk about jQuery++?
Yeah, I can actually just pick up where Ralph left off. saying that can.js is the MVC parts from JavaScript MVC, but in JavaScript MVC we still had like some pretty awesome jQuery helpers like the drag and drop events and form params that was being used a lot. So the next step was to take these jQuery libraries that we have and put them in their own library, and we call it jQuery++. It's been released beginning of June, and yeah, we got like some pretty great feedback. I think in the first week we had like 25 issues opened and closed, so that was pretty cool. People were pretty excited about it. If you want to check it out, just gonna record my screen. You just go to jQuerypp.com. We have a pretty cool download builder, so you can basically select the plugins you want to do a custom build. We have support for Steel, because that's what we were using to build the whole thing, and AMD modules, so you can like very flexible in how you use it. And yeah, so I think one of the highlights was, or the most used one I noticed, was probably the jQuery Animate. It's using CSS3 animations instead of or it replaces the original jQuery Animate. And whenever it can, it uses CSS3 animations. And, well, why does that make sense? Well, every mobile device probably has a WebKit browser at the moment. Android, iOS, all runs on WebKit-based browsers. And, yeah, you can speed your application up a whole lot if you're using CSS animations as opposed to jQuery's native JavaScript animations. So that's being used a lot. We got some pretty cool feedback on that. And
yeah, we're looking. It still doesn't do all animations that it possibly could, right? We've got
yeah. The main problem is like WebKit, Opera, and Mozilla don't support the same range of animations.
Yeah, well,
so,
I meant more like we want to. There's like the step function or some function inside.
Yes. Yes.
That inside jQuery, that if we could interface with that easier, we could get more complete coverage of animations. Right? There's some things that it will not animate, like show and hide. If you run like show or hide.
Yeah, exactly.
Like especially slide up and slide down. Like it'll do animate fade in, but those are kind of compound animations that jQuery does all this pre-calculation to figure out what's going on.
Right.
But then it does call this like step function. But the way that it calls it, it's like it calls that in a way that CSS animations, like we'd have to be doing like animating every style individually and can't like kind of say here's your one group of styles. So eventually we need to talk to like the jQuery people and be like, hey, if you guys just made this one little change in your core, we could overwrite it to do CSS animations much easier. So that, I mean, pretty much everything would be run under CSS animations.
Yeah, I think that was the main problem at the moment, that a lot of the logic isn't exposed to the outside. So it's tough to actually go in there and figure out what's happening without having to redo everything.
Oh, and so since the release, you added it caching like the calculated, but like it caches actual animation rules, right?
Yes, if you do the same animation 100 times, it'll keep it in its own style sheet, and we use that every single time. So it doesn't generate the same animation every time.
The same animation, like style object that's inserted in the style sheet.
Yeah, one style sheet, and that keeps all the styles, and the ones that have been used a lot stay in that style sheet. So that will speed it up probably even more.
Yeah, we need to do a little testing, but it's pretty cool. Like underneath the hood, it's pretty sharp.
Yeah, and we get a lot of feedback, so there is like smaller things that should be improved, but it's being used and it seems to work good. So we'll be working on that, and maybe hopefully it's on the list. We'll be able to dig into jQuery and make even more work with CSS animations. Yeah, so another one we had, let's jump into range. jQuery range will be the thing. Hopefully soon we'll be able to see a text editor demo, right, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, when we have time, but yeah, that and that combined with key name, or the key,
yes,
key plugin, right? That will make building I think, even though I haven't done it yet, I have worked on a code editor in the far long ago, the before time, but I think range, because it makes dealing with ranges cross-browser, and the key event should make a kind of rightly Google Docs style code editor much easier to build, because you can basically just listen to when a key is hit, you can match that against like your list of rules for each key really easy, and then use range. Just you can control the DOM. Don't add what is it to allow editing a div? Content editable. Don't do that. I've done that. It's horrible cross-browser, right? So you can just get rid of all of that just by probably by using range and the key event, and make your own rules. Kind of like how Sin does it in FuncUnit. So
yeah, in the demo you can see like initial easy examples. If you make a selection, it'll show the text of the selection, even though if you have like different tags like strong tag and different H1 and paragraphs, and it also highlights the beginning and the end of each range, so you can like try that out. It probably like it shows pretty okay for what is possible, and eventually we'll hopefully have a text editor demo with it running.
Yeah, we use this actually. Where this comes from is cool. We built for the iPad a custom text selection widget. So like iOS has its text selection where you like hold your finger and then you drag the little handles. That wasn't good enough for one of our clients, so we made our own, and there's a selection event that still hasn't been released, but it uses this range internally to like calculate like where you've clicked and what text, put a text range there, and then be able to compare text ranges and do that whole thing. It was a pretty cool project.
Yeah. Another one. Okay, so this was two of the DOM helpers. The other ones worth checking out too. But what I wanted to show too is, of course, our drag and drop events for jQuery. If you look at the demo, it's really easy to make a draggable and droppable using jQuery events in like a couple of lines. And the latest release actually does have a fix, because the first feedback we got after the first release of jQuery++ was people saying, we would love to have that working on touch devices. So the current release 1.0 beta 2 has touch support for drag and drop. So you can use it on iPads and Android devices and everything. And I think, we can even look at the next event right away that's got quite a stir too. The FastFix. I think, Ralph, you've been talking to the jQuery guys. What was happening?
Yeah. So if you're not familiar with what FastFix is that it's specifically for jQuery. When jQuery creates an event, or one event fires in jQuery, a kind of synthetic wrapper gets put around it, where a bunch of properties get copied over, and it's basically just event normalization for between old Internet Explorer and newer browsers. So when you write a plugin or you're binding to an event, the object that gets passed in is normalized, and it's going to be the same no matter what browser it's running in. So the problem is that the property copying and some of the calculation involved in normalizing the event is computation intensive. It takes up a decent amount of memory, enough so that most of the apps that JMVC apps that we run, if you profile them, a lot of time is spent in this event normalization function in jQuery.
Yeah, it's not so much that it's like, well, it's memory intensive or
right,
slow.
Yeah.
It's just that it's used all the time. Every piece of code that you write as a JavaScript developer pretty much begins at an event.
Right.
And so if you do something like a drag, which listens to drag move, you'll have tons of events.
Yeah, like hundreds firing in like a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
So a lot of time can be spent in this normalization function. So Justin wrote a fix for this called FastFix, which basically takes the new ES5 setters and getters and replaces those with the property lookup. So it becomes a lot faster. So you don't calculate or look at a property unless you actually access it. Is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It wasn't my idea. Someone else posted about this like 2 years ago on jQuery's forums, and I was like, yeah, someone should do that. And then
nobody did.
Then one of our apps was really slow. We're working on like a Canvas app where you're doing a lot of drag drop, and it was getting crushed.
Yeah.
And with Canvas, like if you're moving stuff and complex Canvas app, if there's any slowness there, it's horrible. So I was like, okay, it's time. Had to do it.
Yeah. So you got the performance benefit out of that, and we set up a
JS
I
can quickly show how
example,
I can actually run
which
it.
runs.
By the way, I have it up here. So
yeah, go for it.
If we run the comparison on JSPerf, might take a bit. We saw quite a bit of improvement. It was like 3 to 4 times faster.
Yeah, I mean,
on most
basically
browsers.
Right. Basically, if the browser supports the ES5 getters, like you see a huge performance increase. And this is particularly helpful on mobile, which is if you look at the JSPerf, we'll link it up, but if you look at the browser scope breakdown, mobile is slower than Internet Explorer 6 right now for some handsets. So there's definitely room to improve the events in mobile, the speed of the events. So this definitely
we have fallbacks. So in browsers that don't support ES5 getters and setters, it'll be the same because it'll just use the original event fix. But if you, as you see in the browser scope, like it's 4 to 5 times faster in most browsers. And like Ralph said, mobile browsers that don't have a lot of power, that can make quite a difference.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to point out that all of jQuery's event unit tests still pass when you drop this guy in. So you shouldn't expect any weird functionality. It doesn't change anything. It just works. And I've been talking with some of the jQuery core committers about when this came out. It was kind of an eye opener, I think, and they're thinking of either incorporating this or some kind of other solution to speed up events in jQuery, whether it be using these getters and setters or just using the native event object. There's some discussion on how to make this faster. So hopefully this will become obsolete for jQuery in the future, and Bitovi can kind of push all apps further in terms of event performance. So it's really exciting stuff.
Speaking of that, real quick, Animate passes all of jQuery's unit tests too, except that doesn't really help because I don't think, like, we still found a lot of bugs, but in our implementation versus jQuery's, but it does, and we want it to fall back perfectly, but there's still, we'll find a new person will report a bug because some weird corner case that's not tested in jQuery. And also the dimensions plugin of jQuery++, that is in jQuery now.
Which
the ability to set outer width. It's not in a released version of jQuery. It's in jQuery's master branch.
Oh, sweet!
So
I didn't know that.
That will also become obsolete in the next version of jQuery.
Cool. That's really exciting.
Next event. Oh yeah, I wanted to show another one. Resize, which I think everybody has been using a lot. I found it very useful for anything that you want to, where you need a more application-like layout and need to, react to resizing when the window resizes, when a certain element resizes. If you look at the JS fiddle, you can just drag it around, and if you see the top bar, the yellow one, even if there is a line wrap, all the other fields or areas are still in the correct size. And how we do that is by listening to the jQuery++ resize event. And the big difference to most events is that if you click on something, I actually made a demo for that, I can show that. If you click on something, a click event bubbles. Like if I click on this, this is my markup, and if I click on the text, you'll see that the event bubbles from the text through all the divs to the body, to the document. And when we want to do the resize, that's actually how it started. That doesn't help a lot because we want to resize the outside elements first, so that when the inside elements gets notified that it should resize, that it can look at its parent size and knows, oh, okay, that's what I have to do. So we pulled that out of the resize event, and that's going to be in the next release, which might even be a 1.0 out of the beta. Reverse events, that's how I called them. If we have a better name, we can still rename it. And what these do is basically, if you run this, it propagates from the element you clicked at, or from the element you trigger the event, to all its inside elements first before telling everybody else. So if I click at this div, you'll see that it bubbles to the inside elements, then to the outside element. If I run it again and click on the outside div, it'll propagate first through all the first div child elements and then through the second div child elements. So this is pretty useful if you want to notify something after something happened. And where we're going to use that too, which is why we created a separate event, is for notifying drag elements when they're being moved. So when you move a drag element, all the elements inside will be notified with the move event that they're being moved around on the area. So can be useful for actually more things than just resizing. So for the events I wanted to show, and the jQuery++ parts, that's about it. A quick look at the changelog for the current version. We fixed a whole load of bugs in animate that came up even though the jQuery animate tests were passing. A couple of form params because people were using that. It didn't convert disabled fields and had a different bug with keys with the same name. So we got all of that in the latest version. We put some more demos up and the annotated sources, like for CanJS. And yeah, hopefully the next release is going to be the 1.0 final. We have
Yay! All
5
right.
issues still open, but I
Nice.
think
Yeah.
we're close to that.
Cool. So yeah, I just wanted to, one more thing about jQuery++. The goal for it, I don't know if we mentioned it, but if we haven't, I will just remove this. The purpose of it is to be a basically jQuery's missing set of features. Just the little DOM interactions that jQuery doesn't do because most people don't want them. We want to fill that hole in your heart. We want to put that little range helper because jQuery wouldn't and shouldn't touch that with the 10-foot pole, but we will. We will go there. So yeah, that's what our goal for jQuery++ is. The next project that we're working on right now is CanUI, and this is kind of the love child of jQuery++ and CanJS. Its goal is to be a UI library for CanJS. Mostly, it's going to include a lot of the MXUI libraries. It will have some lower level UI utils like fill. And kind of our take on positionable and things like that. But I think its real focus is going to be, especially with Can Compute, it's going to be things like grids and sliders and things where you just want to say, here's my model, or my model attributes, connect to these, and then when you change them, and when they change, they'll change you, so you can really easily set up cross-binding between your models and these widgets. But the good thing about Can Compute, again, is that these widgets should work. You should be able to use the grid even if you don't want to pass it a model, like an observed list. I don't know why you wouldn't want to use observed list, but you could be able to just pass it an array and it should just still work. You just won't get any live updating, but if you're fine with that, boring websites, then it'll still work for you. So yeah, we're hoping, so everybody in Bitovi kind of has their own widget that they're working on. We're hoping 6 weeks that should be released, and then we're moving on to Steel. I'll probably be working on Steel in the meantime. I'm trying to get a new AMD-ish version of Steel that supports AMD, still supports like Steel as it was, and it also includes like the packages, and that's what we're trying to get ready for like a 3.3 release. We might even get packages working and then do 3.3 release out the door. Largely because Brian's got some trainings coming up, and we really don't want to train people on JavaScript MVC, old MVC stuff product anymore, when CanJS is just like so much better. So it's like, well, all right, well that's a good reason to put out a new release. So we'll see about that. But yeah, Steel, the goal is we want it to support AMD, possibly common JS with like a plugin. Eventually, we want it to run from Node. We've got a branch that does that. We want it like installable through the npm. So you just install Steel, and then all you need is like the Steel JS. You don't need the big folder structure with Rhino and everything else in your projects anymore. You just have like a simple small Steel JS file, and that's all you need. And all the command line tools work anywhere, and that kind of awesomeness. So we're going to release that, Steel, and then comes FuncUnit. We're not 100% sure we're doing with FuncUnit yet, kind of top secret, don't want to talk about it. Probably will have a new name. And then Done.js. And Done.js, the goal is, and kind of has been for the next kind of JSConf. That's kind of when we do our product cycles. We're hoping to have it done for that. So that's kind of the future of our open source stack. So I think that's it. Do you guys have anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I really like the love child analogy between jQuery++ and CanJS.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think. Well, I mean, they're kind of they come from different worlds. CanJS is very stark. Yeah.
Star-crossed
CanJS
lovers.
is very like stark and serious, and like it has a lot of engineering like behind it. And and jQuery++ is like this this kind of fancy, pretty library. And of course, if you notice like who it follows, it only follows celebrities like Katy Perry, Willow Smith, and Paul Irish. Yeah, of course.
Of course.
So yeah, they'll form a love child, and it will be Can UI, and I'm really looking forward to it because we're going to release a grid, and there's not many. I mean, there's grids out there, but when you have models like live binding ability, it should be really easy to do a lot of like awesome complex things. You want a list and you want it like dynamic. Well, just hook your list up to a model that like connects to a live service and can update its things like kind of like the model store. Like you can do all these things with a really strong observable system and make your UI just respond to that so elegantly with a much smaller API.
This is going to be pretty great because none of the bigger UI frameworks has really touched the topic of creating a grid that has the logic behind it. So when we can refer to our CAN models and everything, this is going to be really interesting what we'll be able to do with it.
Yeah, it will be. So yeah, that's it. Thanks everybody for watching. Sorry if the quality of this video wasn't as good. We will get better. This is the first one, and I want to thank David and Ralph for joining me.
Yeah, it was fun.
Of course.
So we'll see you guys in like a month.
For sure.
All right, sounds good.
Yep.
Have a good one.
All right.
Bye.
Have a good one.